Great to hear all of that. Yes. So I'm really excited about this event. You know, when we were planning this event, we were trying to figure out the structure, how it's going to work, um, because, like I said, we really want it to be a dialogue and a place where we can voice our opinions. You know, there's not been a lot of communication and support. A lot of us have felt, you know, it's difficult being an international student in general. And then incorporating that, you know, being an international student at West, you know, further can further complicate things and make it more difficult in some ways for international students. So um, maybe I can pose this one question. It's very broad and general, and I can answer it first, and I can talk about maybe how it addresses, you know, how I look at it, and then I'd like to hear your perspectives as well on the same question. So, how has the global COVID-19 pandemic impacted your ability to meet other international students? And then I have like a corollary to that. How has the pandemic impacted you as an international student specifically? Uh, so I think that so my experience is kind of different because I'm not an international student coming directly from the island. I'm an international student who I grew up in Jamaica for some time. Then I came to the US. So I've been in the US for a little bit. Um, but I think COVID-19 pandemic definitely impacts international students because especially the fact that, you know, we struggle with being home and it's like a lot of us are homesick and it's like we want to go back home, but given the pandemic, it makes it even more difficult, like in terms of travel plans, um, you know, even in terms of um, even going to places where you can find that sense of community is a little difficult, even if it's not back to your home country. And that's something I'm thinking about specifically with Jamaica. There's a lot of Jamaicans at West, but because I'm also studying remote this semester, it's difficult to find ways to keep those communication networks open. But that's where I also think like social media comes in. So that's how I look at it, so to speak. Like social media is how I can keep in contact with those Jamaican students specifically. And I say Jamaican students just because like that has been the community I have gravitated towards my experience at West. Um, but I think like in general, me meeting other international students um, has been, in keeping those contacts with international students has been um, through social media and even emails, like exchanging emails and all of that. Um, yeah, I think that's yeah how I would kind of answer that question. Um, I can repeat the question as well if um, you guys. Does anyone else want to address that question? I can address the question for Ziad um, as well. So the question is, how has the global COVID-19 pandemic impacted your ability to meet other international students?
Oh, okay. So that's the
Oh wait,
question.
sorry. Could you please introduce yourself, name, pronouns, class year, where you're from, your major, and how you're feeling?
Yeah, I'm from Beijing, China. Um, I'm on campus. My feeling, I feel like this is it. Sometimes I'm not okay, and
Mhm.
yeah, and it's just like that. This is the reality. You just deal with it or
Um,
not deal with it. But tomorrow is going to come.
mm, yeah. So, oh, sorry. Did you want to answer that question? I know I kind of jumped in and.
I feel like I already expressed how I feel.
Oh no no no. Oh yeah. So, how has the global COVID-19 pandemic impacted your ability to meet other
Oh,
international students? If you feel that it has, if it hasn't, that's also fine. And
it's
then
not
maybe,
there yet. Sorry.
excuse me? Oh,
I don't really have an answer for it.
okay. Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, I think that like in some ways it can be like really easy to, to speak with and meet other international students. And in some ways it can be more difficult depending on the circumstances. Like I think, especially in this moment, like at West, if you're either remote or you're, on campus, that influences your ability to meet international students. And I think for remote students, it can not to say that it does, but it can make it more difficult in some ways if you um, if you kind of struggle finding those types of communities outside of West. And if your community is like largely based in West, where you can find those international students without being home, it can make that experience and process a little more difficult. Um, does anyone else have anything to add with that question? Um, okay. Um, so something I was also thinking about is um, so I know we have a very diverse group of people here. We have someone from Rwanda, um, and I'm thinking about like um, what is one thing you like about your hometown that you would like to see at West? Um, and because there's such a diversity of students here, I think everyone will have probably a different answer. Like, you could say, um, you know, the food, um, even a little cultural thing. Like I know in Jamaica, something we usually talk about a lot is even like simple things, like the fact that like saying hello to someone is like such a respectful thing to say back home, and it's kind of normal. But like here, it's like if you don't say hello to someone when you walk by them, that's like so terrible. Like to us, it looks terrible, but to hear like that's normal. It's like I don't know. That's like a little cultural difference I see, and something that I wish I would like to see, like not even just at West, but in the US or and like other places that I travel to, is like that kind of, acknowledgement and recognition that you show for people. Um, but do you guys have anything to say on that? Like what would you like to see from your hometown out West that's there and, you know, that you don't see necessarily as prevalent and as prominent. Yeah, neighborly warmth. Yeah, I think, and I think a lot of international students, it's, and I think it takes a longer time for international students, especially to um, try to find like spaces where that neighborly warmth, you know, is being occupied because I think that a lot of us struggle with finding community sometimes, and neighborly warmth a lot of times happens to be like the defining factor, actually, what we're looking for. So I definitely agree. Like neighborly warmth is something I want to see more at West, um, that I really miss from home as well.
I can kind of think of one.
Okay.
I mean, I could connect like the first question and this question, um, because I come from New Delhi, India, and because of COVID, for the most part, you, at least in the beginning, wouldn't really see a lot of people outside because of lockdown and everything. But I mean, where I come from is like a really lively city, I suppose, because there's just like really big crowds everywhere all the time for whatever reason. And because of COVID, that didn't exactly happen. So
Mhm.
I guess that's something I've just kind of gotten used to living here all my life. So eventually, once this pandemic passes, I guess that's something to look forward to because that's how, I guess, at college, even though I'm not there yet, um, we all would get the chance to find um, either our own community or even other people outside of our community, because I think that is one thing that has hampered international students, or maybe not even international students, to find other people and become friends with them or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's, yeah, I definitely agree with that. And like even, yeah, I definitely agree with that because even in yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to the like the neighborly warmth thing. I think it goes back to like a lot of things, but I think neighborly warmth is part of that. And I also think like yeah, definitely like you said, I think, you know, having that community and having that richness of culture present, um, you know, it restores like sort of some, I call it like I've always said this, like this cultural sort of this cultural juice that you've kind of missed for a while and that you've been missing for a while. Um, is there anyone else who wants to add on that or has something that they want to speak, either in the first from the first question or the second question, or they just want to express how they're feeling or express um, their experiences as an international student, their experiences with other international students. Mm, that's interesting. Yeah, I think that that's interesting. Um, and I think I agree with that. I think that um, the US kind of has like a, I don't even know how to call that, but like, um, I don't want to use this term, but clicky like culture in the sense that, you know, it's like groups, like very group oriented. And it's like this group is over here, this group, this group, this group. And back home, like even in Jamaica, we have this, our motto is out of many, one people. So like even the idea or racism exists, but it doesn't exist in the same way as it exists in America. Because back home we say like even if you're an Asian Jamaican, this is not really a thing. Everyone, if you're from Jamaica, you're just Jamaican. This is just how we think about it. But like if we notice like when we come abroad and do these different things, we're then categorized and put into these different groups and then we'll be recognized in those specific groups, you know, Asian Jamaican, Indian Jamaican. Like then we have those groups. But back home, it's just, you know, everyone's welcome, everyone's part of this one larger group. So I definitely see that in my experience. Yeah. Okay. If any, I have another question. If anyone doesn't have anything to add on that. So in your opinion, is it difficult making friends with other international students at West? I know two of you aren't at West yet, but um, or maybe we can skip that question. I could say, or we can come back to that question because I think that that may be a little difficult to determine now. I think it's a little premature, but I can maybe speak on it, and then if you guys have anything to add, but I can just go also to the next question. But I think it's been relatively easy while we were on campus to make friends with other international students because I think that although we don't come from the same country and cultural background, we sort of have the same types of questions as international students. Or we're still, or at least we're sort of thinking about the same types of questions as international students. Um, and I think that's what kind of unifies us in our diversity. And I think that that's why it's not as difficult as it could be um, making friends. Also, I think at Wesleyan for me, there's a lot of like oddly a lot of Jamaicans on campus, and that's very, I think, unusual. I think it's unusual because of how many there are. Um, and I coming to Wesleyan, I thought there would actually be less than there actually are. Um, so one other question I have. What events do you guys have in mind that work to create a more open, inclusive, and comfortable environment for international students at West? And these can be, either campus events or Zoom events. Um, some people are on campus, some people, aren't on campus and they can only meet on Zoom. Um, so I definitely understand those things. Something we were actually thinking about doing not only just for international students but for the community at large, and that the international community could definitely help us with is doing like a recipe exchange. So um, we talked about this before in a couple meetings, and we are talking about maybe um, doing like a different recipes. Maybe someone can post on the study abroad or international or global studies at West Instagram page, and they could make a video, um, and they can make a video. Thank you, Natalia. And they can make a video on, how to make this certain recipe, how could make this dish, how to do this and this. And I think that would be really inclusive, and that would be really like a community-based event, and that would be really good to, build that bridge across the diverse, cultures at West. So that's something we were just thinking about. That's just the general idea we have now, this recipe exchange. And there would be like a different recipe every single week from a different country. And there would be like a little blurb explaining, okay, I'm from this country, a few facts on the country, a few facts on for cultural competency sake. Um, I don't know if you speak a different language that's other than English. You could also, teach us some of the words and some phrases in your native language. I think all of that works really well when trying to cultivate this space of international education and global learning at West. Um, but these are just, ideas. So if you guys have any events or, ideas for different projects and initiatives, um, what would they be, um, if you have any? Okay, I can add something else that we were thinking of. So me and I don't know if you guys know Ria Agarwal. we were talking about an event recently about social justice beyond the US. There is going to be an event tomorrow called Social Justice Around the World. It's going to be a forum. One second. Does West have, okay, so Lumen, does West have some sort of international festivals? No, but what we do have are international cultures, ideas, interests. So there is, so usually that's what International Education Week this week is about. Well, that's what it's supposed to be about. But also for international students specifically, there is the International Student Orientation, and there, that's where you're supposed to meet and other international students, share, ideas, share similarities, differences, share your cultures, interests. But in terms of global events at West, uh, international students aren't really provided with those types of festivals and events. So that's why I kind of asked that question, just because when we're me and another study abroad ambassador were speaking about these topics, we were trying to figure out what events already exist, and do those events actually cater to international students specifically, and do they meet the needs to international students, or are they very global in scope? Um, so something, like I was saying, something we were thinking of is a podcast. Oh wait, so yeah, they're going to be an event tomorrow called Social Justice Around the World. It's going to be a forum that is at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Make sure you go to that. And tomorrow they're going to be talking about social movements and protests around the world. So in a variety of different countries. That event will be led by a couple of FLTAs. Um, so they're from different countries, and they're teaching assistants at West. Oh, I'll just clarify. FLTAs is foreign language teaching assistant. Um, and me and another study abroad ambassador were talking about the possibility of creating a podcast called Social Justice Beyond the US. So that's something we're thinking about, and we're trying to get a lot of professors involved, a lot of we're doing a lot of research, because it does take a lot of research to create a podcast and do a lot of you know this work. So if so that's something we're working on in terms of a project for international students to sort of build that community, and create this more inclusive and comfortable environments for international students at West to voice their opinions and views on these different issues. Um, yeah, so that's two projects we're working on: the recipe exchange and the social justice beyond the US. Um, I really think it's unfortunate, and I think I'm glad, Lumen, you asked this question about international festivals. I think international festivals will be a really good thing. And I think we spoke about that in the past. A couple of people have spoken about that in the past. And um, in some ways, I think the university is hesitant in some ways doing cultural festivals or cultural, um, parades and these sort of things, because of the the overwhelming fear that it could cause, in the minds of many persons in the administration, um, you know, of um, chaos and all of these things. Specifically for the Caribbean community, I know that something that's very popular in our community is carnival, and we've spoken a lot about carnival and the possibility of doing carnival, and I think we've gotten a lot of pushback. With that being said, I think we should definitely, I think there's, if there's enough support, and, background support by other persons in the international community and not just the Caribbean community, I think a lot of work could be done um, there. But I think international festivals is great, and even maybe even incorporating the recipe exchange into those types of festivals could really work as well. Um, yeah.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I'd like to ask, like, more about that podcast that you want to launch. What will it be about? Is it about only about justice or something else? Just yes, I understand justice beyond America, but I want to know, like, if possible, some more details about it. Thanks.
Yes. So actually, the podcast is still in the works, and it's just a more so of a general idea right now. But the idea behind the podcast is to highlight those social justice experiences beyond America, because we tend to focus a lot on America, and a lot of the education, even at Wesleyan, tends to focus just on America. And we as international students recognize, and those in the international community recognize, that there have been social movements outside of the US in many of our own countries. And we just want to highlight those experiences and raise those voices to the levels that are raised with those in the US. Um, so that's what we're focused on now. However, I think, going back, I don't think it needs to specifically be on justice. I think the overall theme could be could be justice, but like, justice is a big general thing. So I think, there could be like levels to it. We could talk about food because of, environmental justice. There's a thing called food justice, and there's like, people say there's like a war on food. So I think there's a lot of things you could tackle within justice, that I think leaves the opportunity to talk about a lot of things um, in the podcast. Um, but please reach out to me if you want more details on the social justice podcast. We really need help, and because it does require a lot of work and research, and we need all the help as possible with this. Um, but the podcast would be probably, I think, once a week we would um, post an episode of the podcast, um, and we would have professors on there, those who are experts in their field. So, for example, in the African Studies department, we have professors who specialize in food technology in Africa. I think specifically Mali, but there's people who do work on Africa in general. So maybe that's something we could talk about. Maybe food technology, and I don't know, food as a mean of securing, uh, securing means of production, securing wealth. These types of things I think would be really interesting in tackling a lot of the issues, um, and also in making the international community and community at large aware of different issues that are happening in our own countries, in other countries outside of the US. Just because, like I said, a lot of our issues and movements are eclipsed by the issues that are happening in the US. Did I answer your question, Lumen? Or
Yeah, thank you so much.
okay. Does anyone have anything else to add? Or just comment or say anything, or have any ideas for a project, initiative? I'm sorry, you can go around and say what languages you speak as well. I think that would be really good as well. Me, I mean, yeah, my language is English, but we also speak patois in Jamaica. So it's like, it's an anglicized Creole, is what linguists would call it. So I speak patois as well. Um, what languages do you guys speak?
Um, I speak English, that's my first language, but I also know how to speak Hindi.
Okay. Hindi. Hmm.
Okay, for me, I speak Rwanda as my first language, and also English, a little bit of French, Kirundi, and some kinds of French. I mean Kiswahili. So
Oh wow, you speak a lot of the languages I speak as well. And okay, Kinyarwanda. I was gonna learn Kinyarwanda soon. Okay. Because I speak
that would be fun.
yes, because I speak a lot of languages, but some of the languages that we have in common are French and Kiswahili, in English, of course. So
Yep, that's good.
yes. Maybe Syra? Oh, Sarah, I keep pronouncing the name wrong. I'm sorry.
Okay, I speak English as my first language, and I also speak Hindi, and there's another language of my state. It's called Punjabi, so I speak that as well.
Punjabi, yes. Punjabi. Okay, so in India, are you in the Punjab area?
Yeah, yeah, it's like north. Yeah,
Yes. Okay.
North India.
Yes, I know. I'm taking a course on like Indian philosophy and thought, and we talked a little bit about that. Okay, that's great. I really think it's important to highlight what languages you speak, because also in April we have this talk. I sort of hinted at it with Lumen's comment. We have this talk. Actually, it's a conference. It spans over 3 days, and it's called "The Power of Language Talk." And in that conference, people share their stories about language learning. People share what languages they speak, the importance of language learning, why we should learn languages, what languages they speak, where they're from, what's happening in their country, um, and why understanding one's language or another person's language is critical to understanding the culture and history um, of another country. Those types of questions are addressed at the Power of Language conference. And I think it would be really great if maybe a few of you, if you're comfortable, you know, got involved or submitted an application for that event. Um, I may be organizing that event. And I would really like to see some of you out there maybe talking about your experience with language learning, your experience with your languages, what language you're learning currently. Do you hope to study any more languages? Um, Hi, Pam. Could you please introduce yourself? Maybe name.
There.
Oh,
I'm so
okay.
sorry.
Okay, no problem. Maybe name, pronouns, where you're from, and how you're feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm actually, my name is Pam Grandy. I'm with the Gordon Career Center. And sorry I'm late. I've just had back-to-back appointments, but I was hoping to come to this event. It's just so much is going on this week. So our office is really working to support international students, and was really interested to hear the conversation and the kinds of things Judith would be sharing today.
Yes, can you speak a little bit about the different things the Gordon Career Center is doing, specifically to help the international community and international students? Because this is something we talked about earlier. How Wesleyan is making an effort to help international students.
Yeah, I think, for all students, finding internships, finding jobs, figuring out what they want to do with their lives is it's difficult. It can be a real challenge. I think, to add in the fact that international students have lots of other complicated factors in terms of geography and visas and all of that. We know that sometimes sorting that out. So one of the things I think we try to really promote is our individual appointments, the advising, that every person's sort of situation and goals and interests. So we do have a whole staff and team of career advisors that are available. So we, try to make sure we are promoting those services, right when students get to campus. And, things working really closely with OISA, Chaying's office. I mean, we're just talking about a lot of students who won't be leaving over winter break, that we're going to be trying to team up to do some and offer some programming over the winter break. And just things like, well, tomorrow, maybe some of you saw the event that's happening with the panel, navigating summer experiences. So those kinds of things, we're often knowing students want to hear from other students and, share experiences. So just to bring people together. So yeah, I don't know if that's helpful to know a little bit about that and what we do. Some people come to us when they're ready, or some people are really at different places. They know exactly what they want to do and they need help getting there. Some people are really sorting out, not being sure, choosing a major, and that sort of just navigating their educational path. Like we've teamed up with the dean's office, and because there are a lot of considerations in that in terms of international students' long-term career goals and, how things like that will be impacted based on what they major in. And so we've been doing some of that more early on to first years and sophomores.
Yes, thank you for that. I think, I think that answered a lot of our questions. But I also, so how do you think the COVID-19 pandemic kind of, maybe altered some of those initiatives or projects, or maybe efforts, to make, Wesleyan sort of a more inclusive and comfortable space for international students, if it did alter it?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of students we know, their lives have been turned up like everyone else's, except that they haven't, many of them have not been able to not only follow through with the plans that they want to do with summer internships, but they haven't been able to leave Middletown. They've been on campus. I mean, there's just, having not the support of family. I mean, that, that impact, I think, we see that's, hugely difficult for a lot of the students. We do have something called Cardinals Helping Cardinals, which I'll just plug. I mean, one thing we're always talking about are relationships of how to leverage connections with alumni and, building community with other Wesleyan alums. And so there is a resource that everybody should know about Cardinals Helping Cardinals. It's on our webpage. It's just alumni who have specifically sort of raised a hand to say that they would be helping students. So that I have found the feedback from that. Students have said, wow, the alumni are really willing to help. And some people have found internships or just found really great advice and guidance through that. So, some international students might feel like they don't really have a network here if they're not from this country, but that's a nice way, again, to just, always know that immediately you have this network of Wesleyan alumni. And then through the alumni directory or LinkedIn, we can, even make that further. But I don't know if that's things that who else is on the call has questions about, but obviously those personal relationships can really help any of this process, when people are just trying to figure out what they want to do, or they're trying to get into places and want to use leverage connections.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions?
Oh, you put that in the chat, yeah.
Maybe even looking for an internship as an international student. That's an important question because it may be different, or it could be a different process.
Yeah, I don't mean to take, I can keep talking. I don't know who else is on the call, or should I jump in and say something to that? Like, we do have, winter break coming. We're open over the whole break. That is a time I think a lot of people will be maybe thinking about their own career development. So we'll have some offerings, but West Shadow will be announced, and that's a chance. That's all virtual this year, but it's a chance to shadow an alum. And so that's a program that anybody, any class year, anywhere can take advantage of, and there are alumni that are willing to talk to you about their careers and what they do and give advice. So that, I think by next week you'll get some messaging about it, but that's a great way to just learn more and make connections.
And is that a flagship partner? Is that the same thing as the flagship partnership? Like that West, or no, that's something different.
Yeah, West Shadow is generally offered every year, and it's where people will, in non-COVID years, actually go to the alum's place of employment. You can actually be in a workspace and spend a day in the life of somebody in their work to get an idea. We have to sort of pivot the whole thing this year because of COVID. So alumni are still signing up because they want to share with students and talk about what they do, but it will be all arranged virtually. But no matter where students are, yeah, they can all take advantage of it.
Okay. Maybe. Let's see, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the earlier conversation. I'm so sorry I couldn't have been here.
Oh no, that's fine. We were just speaking about, we were talking about more so community building things. So is it difficult to make friends? How we kind of cope with making friends as international students at West. How has COVID-19 impacted our ability to meet other international students? And then also how COVID just impacted us as international students in general. We also talked about, ways that we can sort of start to create certain projects and do different work around, creating these more open, inclusive, and comfortable environments for international students. I mentioned like some ideas that we're working on. I'm a study abroad ambassador. I've been working with some other study abroad ambassadors, and we've been talking about something like a recipe exchange. So doing, each week, maybe on the Study Abroad Instagram, or maybe live stream from YouTube or Facebook, and doing like a live session where someone's cooking something and describing how they're doing it, the different ingredients, all of that stuff. And they would, even like maybe there would be a blurb in the invitation that would say, where they're from, where this dish is from. They could possibly give us a few words in their native language or the native language of the country, or in a few languages if the country has many languages. Something like that. That's one idea we had, but also another project that we're thinking about doing. And this is something that requires a lot of research and I think it's going to be a little more demanding, but a podcast. And so tomorrow, there's actually the International Education Week event called Social Protests Around the World. It's the forum. And that's going to be led by the FLTAs. But something we were thinking about as study abroad ambassadors is the possibility of doing a podcast called Social Justice Beyond the US. And in that podcast, we would probably get a bunch of professors. We would have to do a lot of research on different social movements, in different countries, and our motivation behind that is mainly because a lot of the education that we get tends to focus on the US when it comes to, protests and social movements. And we just wanted to highlight those other experiences and other movements that are also happening simultaneously as those in the US. So that's something we were thinking about, and those are some projects and initiatives that we're working on currently.
Great ideas. Yeah.
So
Near study abroad. So was that in that capacity you put this together? Is
yes,
that
me and
yeah.
another study abroad ambassador put this together, and 2 other events.
Yeah.
So there's going to be an event tomorrow. Yeah, so the social protests around the world, me and another study abroad ambassador put that event together in coordination with the FLTAs. Um, and then I'm also in another event with another study abroad ambassador about global public health. So in that event, there's going to be talking about, access to health, healthcare, access to public health, the health conditions, health disparities in different countries. We're just going to be highlighting a lot of things, and it's going to be a panel, and there will be 3 professors who are speaking at that event. So that should be a really good event as well.
I don't know if anyone is, if anyone has particular interest in public health, global public health. There is a conference that Yale holds every year, and it's virtual this year. But my colleague Jacob Gonzalez is the one that has it posted on Handshake right now, where we will pay for students to attend the virtual conference. They can sign up for it, and that's something that is in Handshake if you go. I think the deadline is December 5th. But when you just said that, global public health, that's a fantastic conference. We've taken students there, and taken buses to New Haven to the Yale campus the past 2 years. But this year it will be a virtual conference. But that's something, maybe I can get that to you so that,
Yes,
the program
definitely.
you're talking about, we can
Great.
make sure people there who have that interest.
Right, definitely. And I can make sure I can send that to those persons on the call now.
Yeah. How about I can email it to you directly?
Okay, yes, that works.
Okay, excuse me.
Yes. Oh, that's Lumen. Okay.
Yeah, Pam actually talked about this handshake, and I realized that my account is deactivated. What can I do to activate it?
It's deactivated.
Yes.
Do you know, were you on it before?
Actually, okay, I deferred my semester to spring, and I was wondering if that's the reason why my account is deactivated, because I had it before, but after I deferred my semester, it was automatically deactivated. So
Oh, yes. The way Handshake gets fed from the registrar to students who were enrolled. So that's probably what happened with that. If you're coming in the spring, or you'll be enrolled in the spring, then entering students get that again because it goes through the registrar. So I'm assuming that was the reason why.
oh, makes sense. Thank you. I know my question was out of blue, but I want to ask.
Yeah, I like prospective students don't have access to Handshake yet. Like when you were, so if you were enrolled and then you defer, that's probably what happened. But everything that is through Handshake, like we get that fed through the registrar. The Career Center just gets fed whatever students are currently enrolled. So I'm assuming that is what happens. But if you have other questions, or you wanted to email me afterward, I'm happy to try to connect with you through email, or answer anything. And I know the semester, I'm not sure exactly what date I can probably look that up, and my colleague who handles all the Handshake and entering the new incoming students, if you're curious of when that will turn on, I can try to ask her and email you back too, or we can do that offline.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're coming around, it's 3 o'clock now. I just want to say I'm happy. It was a pleasure meeting and seeing all of you. I really enjoyed all of your stories, and being offered the opportunity to hear all of your expected perspectives. Tonight there is a event at 9 p.m. on participating in classes as an international student. If you're interested in that, or you really want an event to go to tonight, I really recommend and encourage you to go to that event. I believe, no, I'm not sure if that one is hosted by another study abroad ambassador. But that's going to be a great event, regardless. Also, tomorrow at 11 a.m., like I mentioned before, there's going to be an event called Social Protest Around the World. It's going to be a panel, and different students will be sharing their perspectives on different social movements happening in their various countries. Um, if you would like a full list and calendar of the events, I'd be happy to send those to you via email. Just email me after this session and I'll get all of that information to you. Thanks again, everyone. It was really a pleasure meeting you all. I'll also get you the information on the Gordon Career Center stuff, the West Shadow, the Cardinals Helping Cardinals. If you did not get the link that's here, just again, email me and I'll get that information to you. But I'll be sending a follow-up email as well. Thanks again. See you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.